Good morning, everyone, and a special welcome to those of you joining us for QI Power Hour for the first time. This is Dr. Dennis Kendall, Interim Chief Executive Officer at the Health Quality Council. For those of you joining us for the first time, QI Power Hour is a free monthly webinar learning series hosted by the Health Quality Council here in Saskatchewan. We bring together improvers from a variety of sectors with an interest in improving health to learn about quality improvement related topics. All of our sessions are recorded and available on the HQC website following the event. Please feel free to share these recordings with colleagues who are unable to join us in person today, and feel free to check out past sessions you may have missed. While you are on our Health Quality Council website, we also invite you to sign up for our distribution list to ensure you receive regular invites to all of our upcoming QI Power Hour sessions. Over the last year, we've been excited to see the continued growth of QI Power Hour throughout our home province of Saskatchewan, within Canada, and even abroad. So thank you for spending an hour of your time with us and for your commitment to ongoing learning to improve the systems you are each part of. We are looking forward to your engagement and participation in the webinar today. We encourage folks to share their questions and insights during today's session by making use of the chat function. You can access the chat function by clicking on the message bubble towards the bottom of your screen. This will launch the chat panel on the right of your screen. We encourage you to share your questions, comments, and ideas throughout the presentation. We will have some time dedicated to Q&A at the end of today's presentation. Please send your questions to all participants so we can all join in the discussion. Let's take a moment to practice this function by typing in the chat name of the organization you're joining us today from.
Oh, good morning. We have some folks from College of Medicine, Saskatchewan Health Authority, Ministry of Health. Great, lots of folks from across both Canada and within Saskatchewan, and maybe even some from abroad. Thanks so much for joining us here today.
And finally, we invite you to log into your Twitter account and tweet out during the session to share your learnings. You can use the hashtag QI Power Hour and the handle HQCSask. We've also included Shari's Twitter handle here. So with that, let's dive into our session today. So no stranger to the QI Power Hour stage, today we are excited to welcome back Shari Furniss, Director of Learning and Development here at the Saskatchewan Health Quality Council. In today's session, Shari will share about her own learning journey to introduce us all to the concept of graphic facilitation and how we can use visual methods to enrich communication and understanding. So here to tell you that you do not need to be a trained visual artist to get started with graphic facilitation. All you need are some markers and paper. So thanks, Shari, for joining us today.
Good morning. Thank you so much for that introduction. So I'm very excited to be here today. I'm glad that so many people could join us. Here's our plan for the next hour or so. I'm going to start with a little bit of information, what I like to call the blah, blah, blah. I will make it quick though, I do promise. Next, I'm going to go over some tips and some ideas for getting started with visuals. We don't have a huge amount of time together, but I do want to give you some of those things that I think will help you be able to get started applying this and using it in your work. Along the way, we are going to practice together, so please have a pen or a marker and some paper handy. And then at the end, I'm going to share some resources for you to keep on learning. Throughout, I encourage you to show your work. So I have my friendly colleagues on Twitter and mine in the chat. I'll try to pause throughout to take any questions, and hopefully as well we'll have some time at the end for questions. This session is going to be hands-on, as mentioned, so I'd also encourage you to take pictures of your wonderful creations and tweet them out using our hashtag for today. All right, let's launch into the blah, blah, blah part. So I thought it might be helpful to share a little bit of my own journey into the world of visuals. So my background is actually in education. I trained to become a high school teacher. And in the classroom, I use visuals a lot. So handouts, writing on chalkboards, creating overhead projector sheets. That should give you a sense of how long ago I was a teacher. And then when I left the classroom, moved into office work, I kind of left the visuals behind. But I find you can only repress your inner teacher for so long before it comes out again. So a few years ago, I was part of a meeting to discuss this idea of what a one-stop shop could look like for QI coaching. And it was a group of us. We were meeting in a room with a big whiteboard. And so just before the meeting started, I grabbed a marker and I drew a shop. Very simple. It was just indoors with an open sign, a couple plants out front. And what was fascinating to me was how quickly and naturally it changed the dynamic of that meeting. This is a group who had met before, so we had come together a few times around this topic, and we'd kind of fallen into that typical meeting format. So everyone seated around the table, facilitator, the one person who was capturing notes. But this time it was really different, and it was so much more engaged. People got up out of their chairs, which is like almost unheard of in meetings nowadays. They grabbed the whiteboard markers and they began to add in their ideas for what this one-stop shop could be. So it was mind-boggling because you just didn't see this every day, but it was also completely awesome. So that really began my interest in seeing how visuals could change our conversations. And I began to incorporate them in other ways into my work, some of which I'm going to share with you today. In fact, throughout today's session, you are going to see some of the visuals I created specifically for this. So that was my lived experience, but I do want to share some of the research with you as well, because there actually has been a lot of research in this area, and it's quite strong. So when I was preparing the session, I mentioned I created visuals specifically for it. So I was doing lots of drawing, and I thought to myself, you know, if anyone walked into my office, this would not look like I was adulting at all. I mean, honestly, who gets to color at work? Who has their pencil crayons out and all the rest of it? But the science of visuals is very strong. So I hope that at the end of this, people will hold up their markers with pride, because when you incorporate visuals into your work, you are in fact making the world a better place. So here's some of the research on using visuals. For example, when we use visuals, we make our work more memorable. When we connect visual with text, it's just stickier, and not by a little bit, it's actually by quite a bit, 65% in one study. Visuals make our work more engaging, so humans process visuals very quickly, and we are hardwired to like them. And so that makes us very attentive to them. So when you have content and it includes a visual, people are just going to stop and look more so than they would if it was just text. Visuals also make content more shareable, and again, not just by little, by a lot. So if you have visuals in a social media post, so you can put it in your Twitter or your Facebook, you're going to see it spread more quickly than if you just have text. So visuals can help us get our message out further, wider, and it can help make those messages last longer with people. The effectiveness of visuals and how we're coming to understand how important they are is one of the reasons that you see them popping up more and more, you know, in social media, meetings. Helen Bevan, who is an international QI leader, shares some really great sketch notes on her Twitter account. If you don't follow her on Twitter, I'd highly recommend that you do. At her last QI Hour, she was a guest presenter, and she shared her belief that visual language is a core skill of improvers. Now, even if you don't care about other people, visuals are also good for you. So some of the benefits, it can strengthen your retention. So you will remember about 30% more than other things if you include visuals with it. So just imagine all the arguments that you would be able to win with that kind of recall. It also makes our reward centers ping. So, you know, I mentioned humans are hardwired to visuals, and we just really like them. Our brains get happy when we see them. So when you incorporate visuals, you're also going to have that mood boost and be less stressed. So good for everyone all around. Before we get into the doing, I also just wanted to go over some terminology. So you might have heard some different terms: graphic note-taking or sketchnoting, graphic facilitation, graphic recording. They all have visuals in common, but just slightly different purposes. So graphic note-taking is using visuals to summarize information. Doesn't have to necessarily have an audience during its creation, although it might be something you share afterwards or not. Sometimes I create visuals that are just for me. Other times I'm creating them and I'm putting them out in the world. Graphic facilitation does have an audience, so a graphic facilitator is using visuals along with text to help groups communicate and to make progress together. Graphic recording is also in front of an audience, but instead of supporting the group's communication, it's really just capturing that discussion and helping do some sense making out of what's being said. So a graphic facilitator is a really active part of the process, and a graphic recorder is more that observer of the process. I'm not here to tell you what to do. You can make your own decisions, but I will say most of us probably, our starting point is not going to be graphic recording. Keeping up with the pace of conversation in real time, recording it, trying to make sense of it, seeing it, add the visuals, it is not easy work. It's pretty hard, so it's something to work up to. For most people, graphic note-taking, so starting to incorporate visuals into your materials, is probably a good natural starting point, and that's where I really started with this. Graphic facilitation is kind of a nice middle ground. So you might start by using some prepared materials. So you might come in with a meeting agenda that's done using visuals, and then expand your practice to incorporating visuals in real time. All right, so now a inspiring but very short pep talk. So one of the things I hear from people when it comes to visuals is, I'm not an artist, I can't even draw stick figures. And here is the very, very good news. You do not have to be an artist to do this. I am definitely not an artist, and I know this because my sister is in fact an artist. So my entire life I've been able to see the difference between what she can do and what I can do. She can draw anything from memory, and true story, I once put up a Christmas tree that was upside down because I couldn't remember what trees looked like, and I actually had to go upstairs, look outside, and then go back downstairs and put the branches in reverse order. However, what is going to surprise you is how quickly you can learn to use visual language. So here is a quick test in the chat. Can anyone tell me what this picture is supposed to be? I will not be shocked if people say the stuff of nightmares. Okay, yeah, a few guesses. Starbucks, that is a very good guess that I'm incredibly impressed that someone would have gotten from this. So it is, in fact, the Starbucks logo. I'm sure they would not want to make any claims on it. So this is an exercise I did where I had to just take 5 random objects from around my house and draw them. So this is attempt number 1. Now let's have a look at attempt number 2. So this one actually, I think, does look like Starbucks logo. And here's the thing that is really remarkable for me is that attempt number 2 was made literally moments after attempt number 1. So I drew these, I drew attempt number 1, kind of looked to see where I could improve, drew attempt number 2. So you can see improvement really quickly. And finally, when your inner critic is trying to make you cry, trying to tell you, oh, that's terrible, don't put it out there, don't show it to anyone, just remember that visuals and art are not the same thing. Art is really about emotion, so what does a painting or a piece of work make you feel? But visuals are about helping people understand. Art doesn't really need explanation, and some of it, quite frankly, I can't understand, and the little tag saying who produced it and what they called it doesn't help. But that's art. You take it and you look at it, and everybody interprets it. But when we use visuals, they're rarely standing alone. So they're always in context, and that context is going to do a lot of the heavy lifting for you. Art is about artistic fulfillment, so it's created for that purpose. But visuals are about the needs of the group. And what the group needs isn't perfection, but mutual understanding. Okay, so that was the blah, blah, blah. Again, just encourage you to have a marker and some paper handy because now we are going to get into the how-to piece of it. So allow me to introduce you to the visual alphabet. This was just life-changing for me. So this is from the book The Doodle Revolution by Sunny Brown, an incredible book, highly recommend it. It was really a teaching tool that started me on this path. But the visual alphabet is how we're going to create our visuals. So icons, people, faces, and letters. So icons are really just a bunch of shapes put together in various ways. So if you're, let's say you want an icon of a desk or a lamp, you're not trying to draw a desk or a lamp. What you're doing is you're looking at that object or that icon, and you're looking at the shapes that make up that icon, and you're drawing those shapes. So part of your visual practice is going to be looking at objects or icons and learning to break them down into their shapes. So the Starbucks logo, that was one of those exercises of just looking at things and then breaking them down into their shapes. So the visual alphabet is really foundational, so we're going to take a few minutes here to practice together. We're not going to practice all of them, but there are a few that are going to help us with our next few exercises. So you'll see I've circled in red the ones that we are going to try out today. Okay, so with your paper, draw some dots. Draw a few, see how those go. All right, now I want you to draw some lines. And try drawing upwards or downwards. Which way feels most natural and controlled for you? For most people, downward strokes are going to be the most controlled because you have gravity working for you, but you might be an exception to that. It might be more reliable for you if you do an upward stroke. So pay attention to what's happening with your body when you're doing that. All right, now let's try some arcs and some curves there. So try left to right, right to left. Again, is there a way that feels more natural for you? Because that's probably how you want to consistently make that shape. All right, now let's try a few circles. Circles seem challenging, but the really awesome thing about it is that our arms are perfectly designed to be protractors. So think about your arm rotating in its ball and socket as you draw your circle. You know, if you have access to a big whiteboard, you might want to actually grab a whiteboard marker, stand back a little bit, and really just do the full circumference with your arm. And you'll be surprised how perfect your circles can come out. All right, and then to wrap it up, we're going to draw a square or two. So again, try different starting points and drawing from different directions. Which feels most comfortable to start and end? Okay, it is now time to practice. So I'm going to be, you're going to follow along with me as I do this. I will be using the pen feature with PowerPoint MMO, so it's not going to be pretty, but that's okay. It'll still work. So I want you to imagine you're in a meeting, you're capturing notes about updates to the organizational website, and so you want to draw an icon to represent a computer. But remember, we're not looking at this going, oh, I'm going to draw a computer. We're looking at this and thinking about what shapes make up this icon. So I'm going to draw on screen. Let me just get my pointer here. So the first shape that I would see is a big square. So let's start by drawing a square. All right. The next thing I noticed, so there's these lines that connect to that square, and if you follow them, you see they don't actually go straight. They angle out ever so slightly. So we're just going to draw these two lines angled out from the corners of our square just ever so slightly. And then the next thing I'm going to do is draw this line to connect those two slightly angled ones. Next thing I would do is I see there's a square inside that first one I drew. So I'm going to draw that. And then there's this rectangle in the bottom there. So I'm going to draw that. And then to finish it, I'm going to draw this horizontal line across, and then just 3 vertical lines. And voila, you've just drawn a computer. And seriously, how easy was that? All right, let's do another practice. So a lot of us, no matter what work we do, strategy is probably something that could come up in our meeting. So let's say you want an icon that represents strategy. So chess piece, always kind of a classic one for that. And again, we're not going to try and draw a chess piece. We're going to break this down into its shapes. So the first thing that I would do is draw this rectangle on the bottom. Let's draw that. The next thing I see is that there are these two lines that extend up from that rectangle, and they're just angled in just ever so slightly. So we're going to draw those. And then those two lines, there's a line that goes straight up, parallel to each other. And then we have another rectangle. Those two lines connect to it, so we draw the rectangle. And then we have just these, again, just three short little vertical lines. And oh my goodness, we have strategy. And it's just that easy. It's just all about breaking it down into shapes. Okay, this is fun, so let's do one more. So again, ideas, always a classic one to have in your icon toolkit because it, frequently will come up, I find, in meetings. So light bulb is a really nice way. Everybody seems to get that as representation for ideas. So let's again break this down to the shapes. So what do people see first? Feel free to add your thoughts in the chat. Yeah, so I would start. There's a square on the bottom, so that would be my starting point. What would come next for people? Yeah, from there, it'd be this curve that connects with the two top part of the square. Then from there, probably draw this line up, and then the circle. And then around the edges, we have these little lines. So there's a longer one and then a shorter one. And they just alternate long, short. This one seems to be like a little bit longer than all of them, but not that much. And so we just add those in. And there we go. So you may have noticed on the screen that these icons are all from the Noun Project website. It is an awesome site for finding icons. I also love Flat Icons, another one I go to quite frequently. So one of the things that you might want to do is start to build your icon library. So, a lot of us, we have the work we do, we have concepts that come up quite regularly in our meetings. And so those would be icons that you just want to get really good at drawing and focus your practice on them so that, just quickly you're able to draw them without a lot of thought. One of my colleagues has an Icon of the Week challenge to help her build her font library. Or her icon library, and I think that's just an awesome idea. All right, I'll just do a quick pause there before we move from things to people. Any questions or comments? See, people are sharing their wonderful creations on Twitter. That's fantastic. Okay, so we're going to put our visual alphabet to work with people. So again, people are just a bunch of shapes. So we're lines, circles, what have you. But there are some tips that I have found really helpful to keep in mind when drawing people. So we're going to go through each of these. So the first one is to draw big to little. So what do we mean by this? So quite often, when I would draw stick figures, what I would do is I'd draw like a straight line, and then that'd be the body, and then I would have the arms and the legs try to do the heavy lifting of indicating what the body was actually doing. But our bodies don't actually move like that. The biggest part of our body is the torso. So the torso is, you can see I've marked by the X where it is. It really indicates the movement of our body. It's our center of gravity. So if we're standing straight, we're going to see that our torso is centered. If we're dancing, and that is what I look like when I dance, it is not pretty, our torso might shift to the side. And if we're bending over, we're going to have almost that fulcrum where the biggest part of our body is tipping upwards as the rest of our body is moving forward. The nice thing about trying to figure out what the torso is doing is that you have a model with you all the time, and that's you. So when you start to practice drawing people, be really attentive to what your body is doing. Start to pay attention to that. Where is your torso pointing? Where is your center of gravity? And that's where you want to start, and then from there, you add in your arms and legs. The second tip is to add a horizon line. So if you're on Earth, we regularly experience this thing called gravity. I don't think we appreciate it enough. It's quite awesome. So we always expect to see people in relation to the ground. So even if you're drawing someone jumping, we expect to see the ground beneath them. Without a horizon line, it just kind of feels like something is missing. The exception to this being, of course, if you are drawing an astronaut, gravity is not an issue for them, so you can let them float, but otherwise, with people, add in that horizon line. And then the third tip is to point the nose. So again, just thinking about how our human body works, we lead with our nose. So if our head is turned to the side, to the left, our nose is not going to be pointing to the right. It's going to be to the left as well. If we look up with our head, our nose is pointing upwards. So when you point the nose in your visual, that's just going to give people a sense of what direction that the head is looking in. So again, it's just another clue to what that person is doing. Okay, so we are going to put these tips into practice. So once again, grab a marker and some paper. So let's imagine a scenario where you're drawing a visual and you want to show progress. So you decide you want to show somebody running. So we're going to draw this together using our 3 tips. So first, let's start with that horizon line. Now, we're going to start by drawing the biggest part of our body, our center of gravity, the torso. So let's think about what our body is doing when we run. What's happening with our torso? And if you want, and if you're alone, you might even want to stand up and do this motion. Okay, so just thinking about it, our torso is going to be leaning forward slightly because we're propelling ourselves. When we run, we're moving forward and our body leans forward as we do that. So we're going to draw our torso just leaning forward ever so slightly. Now let's think about what our nose is doing. So where would our nose be pointing? Well, unless we're being chased, our nose is also going to be pointing forward. So we draw our head, we point our nose forward. So now we can do the arms and legs. So let's think about our legs. So when we run, we can see we've got one leg is bent, and then we have a back leg that's sort of propelling us forward. So it's kind of pushing off. And then with our arms, we have one arm going back, and then again we have this other arm bent, propelling us forward. And there we go, somebody running, and it's just that easy. Okay, let's do another practice. So again, let's say you're in a meeting and you're talking about a project that's really going to stretch people, and so you decide, I'll draw someone in a yoga stretch because that'll indicate stretching. So again, we draw that horizon line. And let's think about what is our body doing when we're in this pose. Where is our torso? And put it in the chat your thoughts about what our torso is doing. Yes, exactly. It's on the ground. So it's lying vertical on the ground. So that's what we're going to draw. We're going to have our torso on the ground. And then let's think about where our head is pointing. So in this pose, we can see that our head is facing forward. So we're going to point the nose just slightly down because we're just sort of like on the ground there. And then all we need to do now is just add in the arms and legs. So we have this one leg that's just on the ground. And then we have this other one extending upward. This person is very flexible. I'm not that flexible. And then with our arms, we have this one arm that is propping up our head. And then this other arm is reaching out and holding our foot. And there we go. We have someone doing a yoga stretch. And, you know, in context, everyone's going to get this. Nobody's going to be like, well, but they're not wearing yoga pants, so I don't know what they're doing. It's a few lines, so it can communicate what you need it to communicate. Okay, so just a quick pause before we continue with faces. Just a sense of how was that for people? Anyone starting to feel like, oh, heck, maybe I can draw? Absolutely great. Some people still sharing their masterpieces on Twitter. That's fantastic. Okay, let's move on to faces. I love faces. Faces are really fun to draw. For basic reason is that humans love faces. So, you know, back in the day when we might get chased by wild animals, we were very tuned to looking for faces and seeing them and things. So we see faces and stuff quite easily. We're just very attuned to it. So, for example, this is actually an electrical socket. I think we all know that. But also, we see a face that looks ever so slightly concerned. This is a cheese grater, but also it looks like the cheese grater is about to use a really bad pickup line on us. It has quite a smarmy look to it. And then here, this is just a brick building. some windows and a door, but we're quite concerned. It seems to be very upset by something off to the side that we can't see, and we're not sure if we should start running too. It looks like it's screaming. So you can make a face out of pretty much anything. You just need eyes and a mouth. So you can see it doesn't matter the shape or whether there even is a shape that's surrounding the face. If you've got eyes and a mouth, we will see a face. You don't need a nose. You don't need all the other details. Those are the basic building blocks. There are some tips for drawing faces. So we're just going to go over those in a little bit of detail, and then we'll do some practice again. So the first is that eye direction shows focus. So again, this is how the human body works. When we need to look at something, we move our head, but our eyes also move to look at it. So if you want to indicate someone looking upwards or downwards, you would have your eyes showing that direction as well. So here we can see eyes looking a bunch of different directions. The mouth line shows emotion. So here we can see the eyes, they're all looking forward, so more or less the same with the eyes, but the mouth really changes what's happening. So is this person happy, sad, scared, smirking? People say the eyes are the window to the soul, but honestly lips are the window to the soul. And then from there, we just add in details that give character or emphasis. So if you want to add eyebrows can be incredibly expressive, or jewelry, hair, what have you. That's just adding in some detail to further highlight what's going on with your face. So here's an example from me. So this is actually a drawing I did based on my Bitmoji. It was for a year-end reflection sketch note. So this is me, so I did add in a nose and hair and a cute little cat sweater and really badly applied makeup, so it's very realistic. So just some little details to kind of finish and add that emphasis. Okay, again, grab the pen and paper. We are going to build a face together. So you can draw a shape if you want to, but you don't have to. So I'm just going to switch my pointer color to black because red eyes are a little bit creepy. Okay, so let's build a face that looks to the side. So right or left, whatever you prefer. So let's just add in so that these eyes are looking to the side. And then for mouth, let's do a mouth that's screaming. So imagine you're watching a horror movie and you're screaming. Your mouth is going to be sort of like this big oval. So it's like all the way open. And then maybe just for fun, let's add some hair. And you can see you don't even need to add a full head of hair. Even a few lines will suggest hair. People will pick up what you're trying to indicate with that really easily. So there we go. We have a face. Okay, let's try a different one. So this time, let's have our person just looking forward. And then for expression, let's have them be angry. So my angry mouth, I might do something like this. This could probably mean a couple of other things. So this is where I might want to add eyebrows for emphasis to really drive home this isn't confusion, this is anger that we have happening. And then what else? What other thoughts do people have? Okay, sure, let's add a nose. Let's see. Okay, and then, yeah, maybe I want to add some of just around this that just kind of shows this person's really upset about something. And there we go. Again, just a few lines, but it's really clear we have the emotion anger with this face. Okay, so we've made people and things using the visual alphabet, but visuals are usually in the context of words. So we're also going to move on to lettering. And just like icons, just like people, just like faces, letters are also just a bunch of shapes that we put together in various ways. So these are the shapes that make up letters. We have lines, be they vertical or horizontal or diagonal. We have curves and we have dots. And that's it. All the letters in our English alphabet are comprised of this. The trick with lettering is to draw the shapes that make up the letter, not the letter itself. So just like icons, you're not trying to draw a desk, you're drawing the shapes that make up a desk. With letters, you're not trying to draw, say, a B or a W. You're drawing a line and a curve or a diagonal. That's what you're doing. So we're going to do some practice. We're going to do this a couple times. So first, I'm just going to write my name thinking about the letters and not the shapes that make up those letters. And so I invite you to do the same. So just, here we go, here's my name. So now I'm going to do it again, but this time I'm going to focus on the shapes themselves. And if you want to follow along with your name, give that some practice. So Shari, so there's a curve and a curve. Then there's a line, a line, a line, diagonal, diagonal, another line. And we have a line, curve, diagonal, and then a line. So you can already see, even doing that quickly and with the mouse, that when I was intentional about the shape rather than the letters as a whole, instant improvement in the legibility of it, and it's much more consistent. As you practice, you're going to figure out what feels most natural for you to make the shape. It's going to feel a little weird, like you're going back to grade 2 or 3 and practicing your letters. But practice is really the thing that's going to help you see improvement. Personally, I am terrible at lettering. It is one of my biggest struggles with my visual language. I'm just not naturally gifted at it the way some people are. So I do quite a bit of lettering practice. I do it anytime I can. When I make my grocery list, I take it as a chance to practice my lettering. One of the things that I've actually found really helpful is I will draw my letters to the beat of a metronome. So I took piano lessons as a child, so I'm not a big fan of the metronome. It's not one of my best memories spending time with it, but it is really helpful. There's a ton of online versions. I usually set mine to 58 beats per minute, and so I do 1 letter stroke per beat, and it is really interesting how much better my lettering is when I practice with the metronome. As you become consistent with your lettering, you'll want to, just like you have an icon library, you'll want to also build your font library. So what does that look like? So most of us, this is sort of the basic, most of us would have this in our font library, an upper, a lower, and a bold. Uppercase is easiest to read, but it's slower to write, because generally speaking, if you look at uppercase letters compared to lowercase, on most of the time they're going to have more lines so upper will have more lines than lower. So here we can see the letter E, there's 4 lines that we need to make to draw uppercase. Letter E lowercase is just 2. So that does slow you down a little bit, but it is the easiest to read. Lowercase, obviously quicker to write, but then with anything, when you can do it fast, sometimes it's hard to keep it legible. Bold is really nice. It draws I, but it's intended for emphasis, so you don't want to emphasize everything as you like visually shouting at people all the time. It is slower to write because it either needs to be more deliberate, or sometimes you need to go over the lines a few times if you don't have like a chisel tip marker. So that's another reason why you don't want to do it a lot. It's a bit much, but also it's going to take more time. You might also want to have decorative lettering fonts in your font library. So they're kind of like the good china. You don't want to use them all the time, but they can add impact. So these are just a few. And again, the trick is, practice. Find one that feels natural for you, one that you can do reliably and relatively quickly. For me, this would be looped. Looped is my personal default because I can do it quite easily. Especially something like block. Block is not my friend. I really struggle with the S's, and ironically, my name has 3 of them in it in some sort of cruel twist of fate. But I know people that do absolutely beautiful block lettering very easily. I also really struggle with wide. Again, my spatial ability is not great, so I start out wide, and then it kind of becomes really skinny and tight. So if I wanted to use that one, I would have to do quite a bit of practice. Looped is my go-to, and the point is just to find your very own go-to. There might also be, so that's decorative lettering. You might also have some fonts that really kind of kick things up a notch. So there are typography fonts. So you'll see the top, there's a balloon font, so all the letters look like balloons. The bottom one, hello, those are coffee beans. So the letters, the typography fonts, the letters incorporate the concepts. So they're really fun. Again, they can be a bit much, so you don't want them a lot, and typically they're probably going to take more time. If you are good at block letters and you want to dazzle them up a little bit, you can also do pattern fills. So again, it's going to be slower because you're going to have the extra time you need for block writing plus the time to do the pattern, but they can be very pretty. There's also embellishment, so this could be a relatively plain font that you're just adding some little twist to. So, again, it might be a little bit of extra time. Out of all of these fonts, if I was going to use one, it would probably be the embellished one because it's pretty quick and I'd be able to do it quite consistently. You will also notice I chose a word that doesn't have an F because I'm always looking for a font where I can do the F. That is my litmus test. So with lettering practice, there are some really good free worksheets that you can download, and so we'll have a resource that will give you links to that. There's also a lot of font websites out there. One of my favorite is 1001 Free Fonts. So you can actually download font sheets and do some practice. So find one that you think might work for you and just get really good at it. Okay, so those are some tips to kind of get you started, but really only the tip of the iceberg when it comes to visual language. There's just a lot out there. It's a really fun thing to get into. So I wanted to share some of the ways that I've been incorporating visual language into my own work and learning as well as into the organization, and just give you some resources to help you keep going with this. So one of my earliest forays actually into sketchnoting was I did a sketch note of year-end performance reviews with my staff. So ahead of time, I asked staff to share something that was a highlight from the year, something they learned that was meaningful, and a challenge that helped them grow. And then I shared my thoughts back with them about their reflections. So, these aren't perfect. When I look at them, I see all the things I don't like. But it was really hard actually not to do them over and over again, but I didn't have enough time to do them over and over again, so I just kind of had to take them as it was. But for all the flaws that I see, it's really been heartwarming that my staff have kept these. They put them up in their work area. It wasn't anything that they wouldn't have heard from you in the conversation, but there was just something I think about seeing it visually that has made it a bit more enduring for them. Another thing is I've used visual methods in some of our meetings. So as I've been doing our strategic roadmap process, we did a catch-all with staff. So for that, I had a number of visuals I created ahead of time to guide the conversation. So, for example, we wanted to share the intents of the catch-all session with folks. And, usually you'd have a PowerPoint slide that says, today we're going to blah, blah, blah. But I thought, let's make this visual. So we wanted to create awareness about the strategic roadmap. We wanted to share the process we used to get there. And then have a chance for people to share their own thoughts and sort of be inspired about next steps. So a little bit different than a PowerPoint slide, but I think, when people walked in the room and they saw something quite different, it set the tone that this was going to be a different kind of meeting. One of the goals for the day was doing a review of sort of where we'd gotten to where we'd gotten. So instead of, again, the PowerPoint going, we started on this day and then we did this, a lot of text, we made it a very visual timeline. And again, people walked in, they saw this timeline, it was very different. And then we wanted people to share their reactions, so we had Post-it notes and markers, and people added their words up to it, and so then we kind of co-created this visual together. So again, it became an interactive piece. We also have a giant whiteboard by the kitchen, where, kitchen is great because everyone eventually will go to the kitchen. And so in this giant whiteboard, we'll post questions, we'll share information about our learning campaigns. We've got these magnetic markers so people can add to it. And it's just a really fun way of having different conversations. And you can see we did a learning campaign on graphic facilitation, and people just incorporate these little graphics into their work. So, about learning campaigns, so in addition to incorporating visuals into your work, you can also look at how you can learn together as an organization. So, last year we had a learning campaign. A learning campaign is just a way of learning. It's micro, so you have these short bursts of time, like maybe an hour or so a week. We did this one over 7 weeks. And so when I started the campaign, I created the agenda itself using visuals. And it was a really nice community of practice. We learned so much from each other, people's takes on fonts and icons. So there was, doing it as a group, there were a lot of benefits that way. You can learn on your own. There are a ton of fantastic resources out there. We do have a document that lists a few for you. Some of my favorites, the Doodle Revolution I mentioned before, it is a wonderful book. If you go through it, there's so many practical exercises and ideas. It's a really good one. I really like visual thinking. I think she's also got a book coming out on visual doing as well. But again, very focused on the workplace, but lots of practical examples and ideas and things that you can practice with. And then I also have this book, The Kawaii Doodle Plus. It is absolutely adorable. Not something I'd probably incorporate a lot into my work, but generally speaking, children's how to draw books are really good. So I'd encourage you to look into them. They really break it down again into those shapes, so they're really helpful. If you are ready to go all in, I would recommend the Principles of Graphic Facilitation workshop through Growth Consulting. So they're based in San Francisco. They do a 3-day immersive where you get so many hints and ideas. The materials are absolutely fantastic. The facilitator was one of the best I've ever had. It was really an incredible learning experience, probably one of the top 5 learning experiences I've had in my life. So it is a really, if you're super interested and like a trip to San Francisco, I would highly recommend it. But the best thing you can do, honestly, is daily practice. So some days you might just be practicing one icon. Other days you might be doing a sketch note. Whatever you can do, find those opportunities to incorporate visual language into your day-to-day. So, for example, here's a sketch note I did. So we did an evaluation of our first learning campaign on coaching, and usually you just send out a bunch of stats with text and email, but I thought, I'm going to try this as a sketch note. And so it helped me kind of synthesize the information, and I just feel like, people looked at it more than they would have if I just emailed it out. When I go to conferences or workshops or different events, I do what I can to do some sketch noting. So I always have my emergency markers with me. If you really get into this, you'll be surprised how many different sets of markers that you have for different purposes. But, just, again, challenging myself to think about different ways of synthesizing the information. Bullet journals are also really fantastic. So a bullet journal is like a day book, but it's still customizable because it's just blank pages, and then you set it up however you like. So it can be your calendar. Some people use them for habit trackers, for book logs. This is a page I have that helps me track people's birthdays. So again, just another opportunity to practice. As part of our learning campaign, we did a drawing challenge bingo. So I sent out a bingo card, and people had to do all the things that were on there, and it was really fun. People shared what they created with each other. So if you want to do a bingo challenge, we've provided that worksheet for you. And then as well, there's a worksheet available, just some other graphic facilitation resources available. So that is the end of my official presentation. So I understand that we have some questions on the chat, so I'll just pause for those.
Yes, good morning, everyone. It's Carolyn Beck from the Health Quality Council, and I invite you to pose your questions to Shari in the chat function now. Well, and it looks like we already have some coming in. So first question is from Selena asking, Shari, would you consider teaching a hands-on longer workshop in person? And it sounds like others are also interested in that. So any thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, a day with markers would be very hard to turn down. Yeah, this is really just the tip of the iceberg. There were so many really helpful tips that I learned with the 3-day. Even doing the learning campaign, I was able to bring in a bit more. So, yeah, if there's interest, I think that I'd love to explore that.
Awesome. I'm sure a lot of people will take you up on that. Okay, so our next question is from Sophie. And she's asking me about how to find good icons for improvement. And maybe even broader than that, if you have some advice for people around how you can find good icons for different concepts.
Yeah, the Noun project is fantastic. Flat icon, also fantastic. So you can they have a search function, so you can put in the words, and then, depends how obscure your word is. Improvement would return a lot. I think that, too, the nice benefit of doing a group learning is other people have ideas, and it's a community that's so willing to share. So when I was at the Grove, we did an icon jam, so we all suggested concepts, and then we had like 30 seconds to draw them. And so everybody submitted a concept or two, and then we walked around the room looking at what people had done. So I had a concept at Standard Operations. I was like, I don't know what icon would represent this. And it was really helpful to go around the room. People had different takes on it that actually made a lot of sense.
Awesome. I can imagine harnessing the power of the group being really, really great for coming up with those different ideas. We have a really interesting question coming in from CFHI, and I'm wondering about any advice you might have in terms of how to gain additional buy-in from management in terms of developing these kinds of skills among staff, and recognizing that it's not, just about doodling, but it's so much more than that. So, do you have any advice you want to share about that?
Sunny Brandt, so she does actually have I think it's a TED Talk talking about how the doodle needs more respect. Yeah, it's interesting. There is so much research really highlighting the benefits of visual. So I think as it goes more and more mainstream, people will give it more presence in our work life. I think for myself, it's interesting when I had that first real experience with it as a one-stop shop. I don't know if I'd said to people, why don't I draw a one-stop shop and then we can all get out whiteboard markers, how that would have gone over with the group. It was just something I did, and then people started to interact with it. So I think for me, it would be starting to incorporate it into my work in little bits and letting people see how that was changing the engagement, rather than trying to say upfront, will you do this? Because I think people just don't always know how impactful it can be with the dynamic. So I think when you start to embed it, people are just so naturally drawn to it that the resistance would go away quite quickly.
For sure, and we've certainly noticed that here at HTC, our work is continually getting more and more visual, and we've learned more about this, and it's really changed the conversation that we've had in our meetings, for sure. Okay, we have another interesting question coming in here from Jeff, and he's wondering about your thoughts around digital versions of doodles. So not sure if that sparks anything for you, but any thoughts around how to integrate visuals more digitally rather than sort of hands-on?
Yes, I'm not a purist. I wouldn't be like, if you're not drawing it by hand, then get out of my sight. It's not good enough. There are times when you want to hand draw things, and there are times when the visual or the having some kind of program might make sense, especially if it's something that you're wanting to maybe edit or manipulate. You do want to be able to do it with a digital program so that you have that flexibility. So I think it just depends what you need. What are you trying to achieve with it? How enduring does it have to be? Do you want the opportunity to make changes to it? There's some really good programs out there. I love Canva. They have just an absolutely beautiful product. There's another one I use quite a bit. It's called Simple Diagram. I think it was like $49 US for the license, but it's not like a yearly license. It's just a one-time, and really simple but very powerful program, and I do tend to build a lot through that. So actually at the beginning there's the agenda that had for what we'd be doing today. That was one that I built in Simple Diagram, and I ended up making a couple changes throughout the course of planning this, so it was nice to have it as a digital version so I could easily make those changes.
Sure, it's a lot more easy to work around on a screen rather than trying to go over marker.
Yeah.
Okay, and I think we have one more question. Have one more question here. It looks like we have one coming in from Tara. Do you have any suggestions about how to pace yourself in terms of facilitating with different visual formats integrated, especially considering the time that it takes to doodle? So any thoughts or advice on that?
I would say start small and work up from there, and but that I think just comes with practice and experience, and even in our learning campaign, we did some practice with graphic recording, and the ambitious plan that people often started with, wouldn't be sustainable, and you learn what you can do quickly, and you kind of go with that. The nice thing is most meetings are not surprise meetings where we hopefully do not coming in and going, I have no idea what this is about, how much time we have, and how we're going to use it. So, part of it is doing that pre-planning to think about, if we're going to spend, 10 minutes on this and 20 minutes on this, where do visuals make sense and help things, and what can I pre-populate, or how can I kind of think ahead of time about how I'm going to map out my page or my whiteboard to make sure that I'm using the space, and then you just practice. TED Talks are a really good way of practicing some of that graphic recording without the pressure of an actual live audience. And again, you just need all that skill of figuring out what do I capture, when does adding a visual make sense, what can I do quickly. And as you build your font library and your icon library, that just gets easier and easier.
For sure, and as with anything, I think we all know practice makes perfect, and you gain your skills and your familiarity the more you practice. So I think your advice of finding something to work on every day is a great piece of advice for our learners. And unfortunately, I think that's all we have time for here today in terms of questions. But we have asked Shari, and she's more than happy to answer any follow-up questions you may have about this topic. So you can reach out to her via Twitter if you wish, and we included her handle earlier in the slide deck. So please feel free to reach out to Shari through that. So at this time, I just want to say thank you to Shari for a wonderful and highly engaging presentation. I know we had all had a lot to take away from that one, and a lot of practice now to work on as we move forward. Okay, so before we close off today's session, we just have a few more things to share with you all. So as you may have seen, if you've taken part in our recent sessions, all of our QI Power Hour speakers receive a pair of these fabulous I Heart QI socks. And if you want to get your hands on a pair, we invite you to also become a QI Power Hour speaker. So if you have a topic that you think our community of learners would be interested in, we would love to hear from you. So visit the link being shared in the chat to pitch us your idea for your topic. And so finally, we'd like to invite you to join us for our next QI Power Hour session, which is coming up on March 15th. So are some people at greater risk of illness? What makes the residents of Saskatchewan sick? And what can we do about it? Join the Health Quality Council's board chair, Dr. Susan Shaw, and our interim CEO, Dr. Dennis Kendall, as we explore the wide range of factors other than healthcare that influence our health. We'll spend some time talking about the social determinants of health, as well as the fundamentals of upstream thinking. We'll highlight how other organizations have started to see early results in improved population health, as well as better cost effectiveness through modifying these factors through social policy and intersectoral collaboration. We'll share with participants how HQC hopes to influence better health outcomes in the province in collaboration with current and new partners. So please join us next month to hear more about this. Finally, before we sign off for today, we encourage you to take a moment to let us know how you enjoyed today's session. You can send us your feedback by completing the survey that will launch as soon as you close out of WebEx. So just to wrap up, thanks again for joining us here today, and we look forward to welcoming you back for another QI Power Hour session in the future. We'll see you soon.